Hello, boys and girls. This is Miss Little, and I'm going to read the story Owl Moon by Jane Yolen, illustrated by John Schoenherr. It was late one winter night, long past my bedtime, when Pa and I went owling. What does it mean to go owling? There was no wind. The trees stood still as giant statues, and the moon was so bright the sky seemed to shine. Somewhere behind us the train whistle blew, long and low, like a sad, sad song. When did they go owling? How were they able to see if it's late at night in the forest? I could hear it through the woolen cap Pa had pulled down over my ears. A farm dog answered the train, and then a second dog joined in. They sang out trains and dogs for a real long time, and when their voices faded away, it was as quiet as a dream. We walked on toward the wood, Pa and I. What does the author mean when she writes, and when their voices faded away, it was as quiet as a dream? Was there a dream happening on this page? Our feet crunched over the crisp snow, and little gray footprints followed us. Pa made a long shadow, but mine was short and round. I had to run after him every now and then to keep up, and my short round shadow bumped after me. How do the words or the pictures in this book help us to know what snow is like? But I never called out. If you go owling, you have to be quiet. That's what Pa always says. I had been waiting to go owling with Pa for a long, long time. We reached the line of pine trees, black and pointy against the sky, and Pa held up his hand. I stopped right where I was and waited. He looked up as if searching the stars, as if reading a map up there. The moon made his face into a silver mask. Then he called, "Woo-hoo! Woo-hoo! Woo-hoo! Woo!" The sound of a great horned owl. Woo! 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 What does the author mean when she writes, "The moon made his face into a silver mask"? Again he called out, and then again. After each call he was silent, and for a moment we both listened. But there was no answer. Pa shrugged and I shrugged. I was not disappointed. My brothers all said sometimes there's an owl and sometimes there isn't. The author says that Pa shrugged and I shrugged. Shrugging means to quickly put your shoulders up and then release them or put them back down. We walked on. I could feel the cold as if someone's icy hand was palmed down on my back, and my nose and the tops of my cheeks felt cold and hot at the same time. But I never said a word. If you go owling, you have to be quiet and make your own heat. We went into the woods. The shadows were the blackest things I had ever seen. They stained the white snow. My mouth felt furry, for the scarf over it was wet and warm. I didn't ask what kinds of things hide behind black trees in the middle of the night. When you go owling, you have to be brave. The author says the shadows stain the snow. What does this mean? Is the snow really stained? Then we came to a clearing in the dark woods. The moon was high above us. It seemed to fit exactly over the center of the clearing, and the snow below it was whiter than the milk in a cereal bowl. The author says the snow was whiter than the milk in a cereal bowl. What can we tell about the snow because of the author's words? I sighed and Pa held up his hand at the sound. I put my mittens over the scarf, over my mouth, and listened hard. And then Pa called, "Woo-hoo! Woo-hoo! 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 I listened and looked so hard my ears hurt and my eyes got clouded with the cold. Pa raised his face to call out again, but before he could open his mouth, an echo came threading its way through the trees. Woo-hoo! 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 An echo is a noise that you make that comes back to you. What does the author mean by an echo came threading its way through the trees? Paul almost smiled. Then he called back, "Woo-hoo! Woo-hoo! Woo-hoo!" Just as if he and the owl were talking about supper or about the woods or the moon or the cold. I took my mitten off the scarf, off my mouth, and I almost smiled too. The owl's call came closer from high up in the trees on the edge of the meadow. Nothing in the meadow moved. All of a sudden, an owl shadow, part of the big tree shadow, lifted up and flew right over us. We watched silently with heat in our mouths, the heat of all those words we had not spoken. The shadow hooted again. What is a meadow? Are there clues in the text to help us? Pa turned on his big flashlight and caught the owl just as it was landing on a branch. For 1 minute, 3 minutes, maybe even 100 minutes, we stared at one another. Then the owl pumped its great wings and lifted off the branch like a shadow without sound. It flew back into the forest. "Time to go home," Pa said to me. I knew then I could talk. I could even laugh out loud. But I was a shadow as we walked home. When you go owling, you don't need words or warmth or anything but hope. That's what Pa says, the kind of hope that flies on silver wings under a shining owl moon. The end. What does the little girl say about owling at the end of the story? Did she tell us this earlier in the story? Boys and girls, I hope you have enjoyed the story Owl Moon by Jane Yolen.